Hi everyone, it is my pleasure to introduce my today's speaker, Mohammad Hassan Lotfi. He is my friend as well as colleague, and he is doing his PhD under Saraswati Sarkar. So he has attended his bachelor's degree from Sharif University, Iran. And today's topic is like economics of non-neutrality. Apart from net neutrality, his research interest is in like a broad area of game theory, like pricing in communication and power network, and economics of network. Okay, so over to you.
Thanks, Arnold, for the introduction, and thanks for attending my talk this time of year. Today, I'm going to talk about economics of non-neutrality in the Internet. But before going to the talk, just let me tell you some stories about history of regulation on public utilities and also Internet. You probably know this guy, Thomas Edison. So he installed the first central power station in New York City in 1892. At that time, all the power stations were producing DC, therefore they had to be close to their customers. Thus, we had a lot of competition in every city because there were a lot of power stations producing DC electricity for their customers. But in 1886, there were some developments in AC transmission by Westinghouse company. After that, the war of currents started between AC and DC, which was an infamous competition between Edison and his competitors. But in 1892, Edison lost the battle or the competition. He was forced out of his own company, and the company lost a big chunk of the market. But that wasn't the end of the story for Edison's company. This guy, Samuel Insull, he came to Chicago in 1892, became the president of one of small Edison's company called Chicago Edison Company. And he had very good ideas about how we should generate electricity and some good ideas about regulation on electricity market. So around 1900, he came up with this idea. He bought a couple of big AC transmitters and installed a couple of centralized AC power stations. And at the same time, he started buying all of his competitors, and he became a monopoly, a virtual monopoly in electricity market in Chicago. By expanding the generation and producing electricity in mass scale, and also by having lots of customers, he managed to break down the cost to the customers. And even though he was a monopoly in Chicago, he was offering very fair prices for electricity. So at the same time, he was campaigning for what he called regulated monopolies. So he was saying that electricity, just like railroad or some other public services, is something called a natural monopoly. Cannot be too much competition in this market because competition leads to inefficiency, and this inefficiency is paid by the customers. Therefore, he is one of the pioneers of what we call today public utility regulation. So what is public utility? A public utility is a company that maintains the infrastructure of public service. This public service could be water, could be gas, could be electricity, could be sewage, and as of February 2015, just a couple of months ago, it could be broadband internet, which is both wired and wireless internet. Often, most of the time, these public utilities are government monopolies or some private companies that are regulated by a federal commission. And most of the time, these public services are natural monopoly. Over time, there were some developments in technology for these public services. So as of 1970, we have this trend of deregulation from a lot of these public services. And there is a lot of criticisms about this regulation on this utility in the US. Some people say that over-regulation by government will kill innovation and investment in the infrastructure of the network. One other criticism is that over time, these regulated utilities tend to influence the regulatory agencies by paying them or by lobbying. which they call it capture theory of regulation. Today, many of people believe that enforcing competition, if it's possible, is a better idea than regulation. So now let's get to our main topic today. It's net neutrality. It's the regulation on the internet. So the first regulation on the internet started in 1996. Actually, it wasn't regulation, it was deregulation. So in that time, government separated telephone from information services. These information services can be roughly considered to be internet. So even though we have some tough regulation on the on telephone companies, government accepted to lift the regulation from information services. Therefore, at that time, we had that boom in the investment in the technology and the development on the internet. In 2002, Federal Communication Committee, which is FCC in short, they also listed cable companies as information services. Therefore, again, low regulation for these kind of cable companies. This gets to 2007. And at that time, there was some controversy over how Comcast is treating different packets. So Comcast was blocking the packets from BitTorrent. After that, FCC made some rules called net neutrality rules. They were extremely vague rules, but if I want to just summarize them, there are some policies that force ISPs to treat all data, regardless of the source, the destination, or type of data, the same. Just like telephone calls that should be treated the same. There were lots of debates over do we need these kind of rules? Is this good to have these kind of rules in the internet or not? And there were a lot of law cases against these rules. But eventually, in January 2014, a federal appeals court struck down parts of FCC rules for the internet. Therefore, after that, ISPs are allowed to differentiate somehow between the packets. For example, just a month after that, in February, Comcast and Netflix signed an agreement in which Comcast gets some money and provide a better quality for Netflix customers. And also, we had these plans called AT&T sponsored data plans, in which content providers pay for the data that their users want to use. For example, if I want to watch ESPN on AT&T network, I can do it for free without using my data quota because ESPN is paying for me. So these are some kinds of non-neutrality that started to happen after January 2014. But just in February 2015, FCC listed broadband internet, both wired and wireless, as public utilities, which was a very big surprise for everyone. So right now, government can impose more strict rules on the internet. Not only put net neutrality rules in action, but also more strict rules other than net neutrality. But this won't be the end of this story. There are a lot of law cases coming out, and we expect a lot of debates over these regulations on the internet. So there are a lot of points that proponents and opponents of net neutrality are saying. For example, proponents of net neutrality saying that a non-neutral regime will kill innovation on the content provider side. Because, for example, if a monopoly in content like Google start paying for the premium quality, then the small competitors like startups cannot pay for that premium quality, and over time we have just some monopolies on the content provider sides, which is bad. They also say that Comcast is somehow a monopoly in the market because it has more than 60% of market share in the United States, And many of these customers do not have any other choice than Comcast. So they say that they should list Comcast as a utility and put strict regulation on the way that Comcast is managing their data. But some other people are rooting for relaxing net neutrality rules. They say that since internet is a very dynamic environment, every month, every year, we have something new that this ISP should figure out how to handle. Therefore, we cannot list it as public utility because it slows down the decision process by the ISPs. And also, they said that not all data are equal in the internet. In telephone, it makes sense because every telephone call is the same. But on the internet, a packet from YouTube and Skype has different characteristics as a packet like offline downloading, because we have for a streaming website like Netflix and YouTube, we have these bursty characteristics of the demand. Not only this, YouTube and Netflix are responsible for more than 50% of peak traffic time in the United States. So all these weird traffic needs a lot of network management by the ISPs and also a lot of investment in the infrastructure. So if we put net neutrality rules, then it decreases the incentives of ISPs to invest in their infrastructure. Therefore, over time, we have a very slow internet. Or if ISPs want to invest actually in their infrastructure, they should build end users for this kind of investment, even though they are not using Netflix or YouTube, which they are saying it's not fair. Therefore, content providers are the ones that should pay for their costly traffic. So as you can see, everyone has its own point. So there is a big debate between Republicans and Democrats right now. And now it's time for government to eventually decide on what it wants to do with the internet. What we do is to provide some insight for policymakers. So our work is the intersection of engineering, economics, and policy, public policy. We model the internet market as with economics model. In our economic model, we have at least 3 entities. One entity is ISPs, which are internet service providers. The other is content providers, and the other entity is end users, which are us, just customers of internet. We considered several problems about this internet model. So one of them is one of them is network neutrality adoption without any regulation. Suppose that we don't have any regulation over the internet market. What will happen? Do we have non-neutrality or neutrality? Does competition somehow can control the behavior of ISPs or not? And also, we want to analyze the social welfare of the market, on the internet market. And at the end, we want to somehow provide some intuition for the question that do we need regulation on the internet or not? The other problems that we consider is different pricing frameworks for this non-neutral internet, for this new internet, and to see which entity is going to be affected by these new pricing frameworks and what is the effects of these frameworks on the market in the long run. So in this talk, I am going to focus on our recent work here in net neutrality adoption. And the main question that we are trying to provide some intuition for is that do we need regulation on the internet market or not? So as I said, a main factor in determining the amount of regulation that we need in the market is the competition. So our main focus here is the competition between ISPs. Also, we have a special feature in the internet market is that, and this special feature is that content providers can have some leverage over the internet market and somehow can control the equilibrium of the market by differentiating between different ISPs and their end users. For example, as an extreme case, consider that we have Google, which is a monopoly in the content provider side. Google can say that a non-neutral ISP should provide a premium quality for me without me paying anything to the content to the ISP. If not, I'm going to cut down the service to the end users. Therefore, ISPs have to provide some kind of incentive for the content provider. So this is somehow the leverage of the content provider by which they can control the pricing behavior of the ISP and also their policies. So in our model, we consider that we have competition between ISPs. Some of the ISPs are neutral, some others are non-neutral, and they can provide premium quality for content providers in exchange of money. We have asymmetric competition between ISPs. I'm going to explain what does it mean later. And in our model, content providers can differentiate between different ISPs and also their end users. And the goal, as I said, is to figure out what is the social welfare in this kind of regime, and do we need regulation or not. So our model is like this. So these red arrows are the flow of money, and the blue arrows are the flow of content. We have two ISPs, neutral ISP and non-neutral ISP. We have a content provider that works with advertisement revenue model and generates some revenue from ads. And we have a continuum of end users that are distributed between 0 and 1. As you can see, the neutral ISP charge the price of PN to the end users, and non-neutral ISP charge the price of PNON to the end users of the non-neutral ISP. And content provider can provide a free quality for users of neutral ISP, but if it wants to provide a better quality for users of non-neutral ISP, it should pay a price, which is a linear function of the quality that it gets. And also, content provider gets some advertisement money, which depends on the quality that it provides for the end users. So we have
only one content provider?
We have only one content provider, yeah. We model this framework using a sequential game. So in our sequential game, we have 3 stages. In first stage, ISPs decide on the internet connection fees and also the site payment to maximize their payoff, which is a function of their strategy. So the payoff for the neutral ISP is the money that they get from the end users. The payoff for the non-neutral ISP is the money that they get from the end users plus some side payment that they get from the content providers. In the second stage, having the decision of ISPs, content provider decides on the quality that they want to provide over each of these ISPs to maximize this payoff. So this payoff is dependent on the advertisement money that I get on from the end users of neutral ISP plus advertisement money that I get from the end users of non-neutral ISP. As you can see, if content provider provides a premium quality, it should pay some side payment to the non-neutral ISP. And in the final stage of the game, end users decide on which ISP they want to join as the internet provider. We use a hoteling model for the end users, which is a common model in economics. In these frameworks, the valuation of an ISP is dependent on the proximity of this ISP to one of the valuation of an end user for an ISP is dependent on the proximity of end user to one ISP. This proximity is not actual proximity. It's just there to model some kinds of inertia for end user for some ISPs. For example, this inertia could be a contract that I have with an ISP. So if I have a contract with an ISP, I will be located near one of these ISPs, and I don't have an incentive to change to the other ISP. Or this inertia could be because of prior experience. I somehow like Comcast for no reason. The utility of an end user that is located at distance x of ISP J is a common utility V star, which is a constant for all end users, plus the utility that I get by providing the content, which is a linear function of the quality that I get, minus a transpose cost, which is what I said, the cost of proximity to an ISP, minus the price that I pay for the internet. And one important factor in this model is these TJs, which is Tn for the neutral ISP and Tnon for the non-neutral ISP. So these TJs are transpose cost of ISPs and are have reverse relationship with the market power of an ISP. So when this TJ, this transpose cost, is very low, this means that the ISP has a very big power on the market, and it's somehow a monopoly on the market because users can easily switch to this ISP and have more valuation for this ISP. And we assume a full market coverage on the end user side. So we assume that V star is large enough such that all end users eventually pay for the internet connection fee and connect to one of these two. This is a common assumption in these kind of models because it ensures competition between ISP. Without this assumption, we don't have any competition.
What is kappa again?
This one,
Yeah.
kappa AD, is just a constant that relates the quality that I get as an end user to the satisfaction or to the payoff for that content.
ISPs don't take any action in this model?
ISPs take action in stage 1 when they decide on these internet connection fees and site payments. Then in stage 3, knowing these internet connection fees that is set by the ISPs, content providers, end users decide on which ISP they want to pay for the internet.
How is the type is decided as being non-neutral or neutral?
So we assume that they are fixed. For somehow they are fixed. We're going to explain more about this, but suppose that the neutral ISP is an ISP that either do not want to invest and provide premium quality to the end users because of, for example, it doesn't have any incentive to provide some kind of premium quality to the content provider and stay neutral. But we're going to address that. So if we give the decisions to the ISP to be neutral and non-neutral, sometimes it's better for ISPs to switch to non-neutrality. But we're going to discuss about that later. So right now, the only decision that ISPs are making is the internet connection fees. And non-neutral ISP has another strategy, which is the side payment that it wants to get from the content providers.
Just has one extra strategy, but no
Yes. Yes, just one extra leverage. Yeah. So we should characterize the subgame perfect Nash equilibrium in this game using backward induction, which means that we start backward. We start from stage 3 and go backward to find the equilibrium. So in stage 3, end users decide on which ISP they want to join, and the fraction of end users that go with non-neutral ISP is determined by this equation. So this X star n is the location of an end users that is indifferent between joining a neutral and non-neutral ISP. As a sanity check, you can see that as we increase the quality on the neutral, the number of end users on the neutral ISP will go up. As we increase the internet fee for the neutral, the number of end users for the neutral is going down. And because of full market coverage, we have the fraction of end users on the non-neutral is 1 minus the fraction of users with the neutral. Having these decisions by the end users, which is a function of the qualities that content provider decides about, and also the internet connection fees, content providers maximize their payoff and find the quality, QN and QNon in each of these ISPs. So we have different equilibrium outcomes depending on 2 parameters. One, P tilde, which is the side payment that they should pay to the ISP, not they, just non-neutral ISP should pay to the ISP. And delta P, which is the difference between the internet connection fee for that non-neutral set minus the internet connection fee for the neutral.
Is there any particular reason why you want to remote this as a three-stage decision process instead of just having a simultaneous game?
So it's there to capture the timing of the game. So it's we expect that in real world, first ISP decides about some strategy that they want to choose, then content provider decides their strategy based on the ISPs, and then end users pick the price, right? So it's not like I as an end user choose my strategy simultaneously as an ISP. There is some lag in the decision making, right? So there are a lot of different equilibrium outcomes that we expect depending on the regions of different regions of P tilde and delta P. I'm going to explain some of more simple ones. So the first result that we have is that, which is somehow intuitive, is that when this P tilde, which is a side payment, is greater than a threshold, then content providers go with the free quality and do not take the premium quality option. That is, as I said, is intuitive. When the price is high, I do not take the premium lane option. And as a sanity check, you can see that this threshold is dependent on this fraction of free quality to the premium quality. And as we increase the premium quality, the side payment that non-neutral can quote goes higher. And this is only a sufficient condition for not taking the premium quality, and it's not necessary. We have other condition on delta P, which makes the content provider to just go with the free quality, and we will have just neutrality in the market. For example, consider that P tilde is less than the threshold, but we have some conditions on the free quality. Free quality is higher than the threshold. Then, depending on different regions for delta P, we will have different equilibrium outcomes for the content provider. For example, in region A, when delta P is less than a low threshold, then the optimum quality for content provider is to provide with maximum quality on the non-neutral ISP and provide with zero quality on the neutral ISP, which means that the number of end users for the neutral ISP goes to zero, and the neutral ISP will be driven out of the market.
I'm sorry, I have a simple question. I forgot to write down the symbols, but what is Q tilde T?
No, it's just a threshold. Yes, because I didn't put the expression because it gets messy. But it's considered that it's a threshold depending on the Tn and Tnon, which were the transpose cost of ISPs. And the other extreme is in this region C, when delta P is higher than a high threshold. Then the optimal strategy for content provider is to provide a free quality on the neutral ISP and with zero quality on the non-neutral ISP, which means the non-neutral ISP will be driven out of the market. So this is somehow the leverage of the content provider over the market.
And delta P is the difference between
P non minus P n, which is the internet connection fee for the non-neutral minus neutral, which means that if internet connection for non-neutral goes up, then content provider choose the strategy such that this ISP goes out of the market. So this is the kind of leverage that I was talking about. And somewhere in the middle, we have different outcomes. For example, in this region B2, under some condition on P tilde that I'm going to skip, we have the equilibrium of offering, in B1, we have the equilibrium of offering free quality on both ISPs. Therefore, both ISPs are active. So we have this kind of in-boundary solution between these two thresholds. And we have also the similar result for when P tilde is equal to the threshold, and also when we have the complement of that condition on free quality. But two things are in common in the results. So we expect that when this premium quality goes down, when this side payment for the premium quality goes down, content provider will be more willing to pay for the premium lane, obviously, and also they are more have more incentive to choose their quality such that to migrate all the end users to the non-neutral ISP to make a better advertisement quality on and profit on the non-neutral side. Therefore, as this PT law decreases, the neutral ISP will be driven out of the market. The same effect happens when delta P is low. So as delta P decreases, the equilibrium of the market goes from only neutral to both ISPs active and then only non-neutral. And as I said, this is the result of that kind of leverage that we provide for the content provider to differentiate between different ISPs. So having the equilibrium strategies of the content providers and also end users, now ISPs can decide on the strategies in the first stage to maximize their payoff. So the first result is that always in the equilibrium, ISP offer with this threshold for on-site payment. And after that, we should characterize these PN and PNO, which were internet connection fees. These characterization, again, depends on the value of free quality and the transpose cost. So we characterized different candidate outcomes of the game using these different regions of these parameters, and also found necessary conditions for each of these candidate outcomes. Having some natural tie-breaking assumption, we can find a unique Nash equilibrium for the ISPs. I'm not going to present the expressions here, but I show you the relationship of internet connection fee with respect to the transpose cost of neutral and non-neutral. So the transpose cost of neutral, as I said, is somehow has a reverse relationship with the market power of the neutral. And we have two different regions in this figure. So the green line is the internet connection fee that's set by neutral ISP, and the blue line is the internet connection fee set by non-neutral. As you can see, in the first region, non-neutral in the equilibrium outcome, non-neutral will provide the best quality on the content provider provides the best quality on the non-neutral and zero quality on the neutral. Therefore, all the end users of neutral goes with the non-neutral ISP, and the neutral ISP will be out of the market. And in this case, you can see that we have a jump in the price. So the price is very low for the end users because non-neutral ISP use some of the money that it gets from content providers and provide as subsidies to the end users just to keep this neutral ISP out of the market. So we have cheap internet connection for end users in these regions. But after the market power of the neutral ISP decreases, we expect that this price competition becomes more profitable for the non-neutral ISP. Therefore, it sets delta P such that we have both ISPs active and involved in a price competition, and they both offer high internet connection fees for the end users and provide little subsidies for them. This one is the relationship between these internet connection fees and T-non, which is the reverse of market power of the non-neutral ISP. So again, we have the same two regions. The second region is the same as before, but the first region we have this decreasing relationship between the internet connection of the non-neutral with respect to the as we decrease the market power of the non-neutral. So as we decrease the market power of the non-neutral forced to provide even more subsidies to the end users, provide them a cheaper internet to keep this neutral out of the market. And as you can see, we have some regions that price is less than even less than the cost, just to keep the neutral ISP out of the market and get the money from the content providers. So it's important to determine different equilibrium outcome depending on this market power. So in this figure, in the horizontal line, I have market power of the neutral ISP. On the vertical, I have market power of the non-neutral ISP. And we have two different regions. Just below this curve, only non-neutral ISP is active.
Sorry, how do you define market power?
It's something like this. It's 1 over market, 1 over Tn. Yes. With it should be some constant, but roughly it's 1 over Tn. So below this line, we have only non-neutral ISP active, and the neutral will be driven out of the market. And below this curve, we have both of them active and involved in price competition. There are 4 regions that are important. The first region is this region A. In this region, the market power of both ISPs is small. Therefore, we have a good competition. In this case, non-neutral use some of the money from this content provider provide as subsidies to the end users and make the neutral ISP to go out of the market because we have some kind of competition between them. In region B, again, we see the same effect when the market power of the non-neutral ISP is low. So when the market power of the neutral ISP is high and market power of non-neutral ISP is low, then if they involve in price competition, non-neutral ISP will lose the price competition because it has lower market power. Therefore, it provides even more subsidies to the end users just to keep the neutral ISP out of the market and out of price competition. But as the market power of the non-neutral also increases, we go to this region that both of them are active and do this price competition and provide little subsidies for the end users. The other region is this C, in which market power of neutral ISP is low and the market power of non-neutral ISP is high. In this case, neutral will go out of the market. But as we increase the market power of the neutral ISP, we have this region that both of them have very high market power on their end users. Therefore, they again get involved in the price competition and again provide little subsidies for the end users. So having these different regions and different internet connection fees, we want to find social welfare for end users in each of these regions. So the social welfare is defined as the sum of internet, some of the money that, some of the payoff of the end users on neutral and non-neutral ISP. So first, we want to compare the social welfare of a neutral vs non-neutral regime. Only in region A, we have the case that the social welfare of the neutral ISP for end users is higher than a non-neutral ISP, because in other regions, non-neutral have to pay some subsidies to the end users. Therefore, we expect the social welfare of the end users to go up. And between different regions in a non-neutral regime, region B has the best social welfare, because in this case, the market power of neutral ISP is high. Therefore, non-neutral should pay even more subsidies to keep the neutral ISP out of the market. Therefore, we have the maximum social welfare in non-neutral case in region B. And that's the region that we have the price that is going even less than cost.
Sorry, which social welfare you were measuring at?
Social welfare is defined as the payoff of just end users. So
basically a consumer surplus?
Yes, okay. Yes. This is a social welfare for end users, yeah. So we expect that as the market power of an ISP decreases, the social welfare go up. That's true for just these 3 scenarios, but it's not true for this one. Again, as I said, when in this case, when the neutral ISP eventually will be driven out of the market, the higher the market power of this neutral, the higher the subsidies that I should provide for the end users. Therefore, the higher the social welfare or customer surplus. So let's get back to the main question: do we need government intervention or do we need regulation on these kind of market? So it depends. If government wants to ensure that customers get fair or cheap internet connection fees, then probably when we are in this region A, when we have ISPs that both of them has low market power, which we are not right now in US, probably we don't need regulation. This competition makes everything good for end users. Also, if we are in other regions, if we have the option that some of the ISPs become neutral, some other become non-neutral, then again the social welfare go up. Social welfare in the sense that they get customers get a cheaper internet. But what if governments wants to just ensure that some neutrality on the internet preserve and not all ISPs become non-neutral? In this case, we probably need regulation in this region when at least one of the ISP has low market power on the end users. So this, if government decides that we are in this kind of region, it should somehow either provide tax deductibles for neutral ISPs or figure out some regulatory policies to just keep the neutrality in the internet. So what if government wants to decide about innovation on the content providers? That's not something that we're going to answer here, because we consider only one content provider and we didn't consider competition between content providers. That's something that we want to consider in future books. It's a more complicated model, but something that should be handled. So to conclude the talk, we considered an asymmetric competition between ISPs, and also we consider content providers that have some leverage over the market by differentiating between different ISPs. As you can see, there are a lot of parameters in these kind of models, and even with easy payoff like linear payoff, we end up having a very hard time to find out some intuition out of these results. And that's why the whole net neutrality debate is so vague right now. And right now, government needs even more intuition on the market on first investment decision by ISP. Do these kind of net neutrality or non-neutrality enforce ISPs to invest in their infrastructure or not? And somehow, as a future work, somehow we should model or quantify the notion of innovation on the content provider, which is again vague in this debate. Thanks for your attention.
My question is one of modeling. So is this supposed to model an individual metropolitan market, or is this somehow at a nation level, or?
It depends.
Me as a consumer, when I moved to Philadelphia, I had one option.
Exactly. So we didn't put any constraint on the competition, and we consider different parameters for ISPs. For example, in Philadelphia, probably this T-non for the Comcast is very small, and this T for other ISPs like Verizon, Fios is very high, because we don't have the option, or it's very hard, or it doesn't have the quality that Comcast provide. So it depends. The parameter can be set depending on where you are living.
Yes, so I have a question.
Okay.
So if we have a competition among the content providers, so how do you see this change? This change?
So that's more complicated. So the one thing that we should consider when there is competition between content providers is what FCC is very afraid of, and it's called market fragmentation. So in this kind of competition, then content providers can discriminate between ISPs and just divide the end users between themselves to have some kind of monopoly power over the end users. For example, suppose that Netflix and Hulu has some kind of competition, and they have to charge lower subscription fee because of this competition. One scenario for this content provider is to just divide the market. One of them go with Comcast, the other go with the Verizon, and on each of these markets they have the monopoly power. They can set very high prices, therefore they can increase their payoff. So this is what FCC calls market fragmentation, which is a very bad thing on the internet. So maybe that kind of stuff can happen in the results. Yes. The quality that neutral and non-neutral, the quality that content provider sets for the end users of neutral and non-neutral ISP.
So in your equilibrium analysis, can you also give us the performance in terms of quality?
The performance of what?
Price and market share. I mean, what is the quality outcome? Quality-wise, what is the
Okay, so the decision of content providers on quality depends on this decision of ISPs, right? On the price that they set for the end users and also site payment. So, for example, here when we have this parameter on T-non, then the optimum price that is set by the ISP is this, and in this region the optimum quality selection is by CP is to provide the best quality on non-neutral ISP, which is a premium quality, and to provide zero quality on the neutral ISP, which means just the content provider sets the quality to drive the neutral ISP out of the market. Right now, in this region, we have two scenarios. One scenario is in which content provider sets the highest quality on the non-neutral, which is the premium quality, and free quality on the neutral. Both of them are active. Or also the case that content provider provides free quality on both ISPs, therefore neutrality on the market.
And the decision is not desirable?
It depends. So the first decision makes a very good internet connection fee for the end users, but we end up with just one ISP which is not neutral, a monopoly power. So it depends if government wants to provide social welfare in terms of fee or internet bill that I as a customer pay, or it wants to increase the diversity of product or internet that I'm connected.
So in the social welfare analysis, you have considered the quality, right?
No, I just considered the payoff of end user, which is dependent on the quality.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so that means that the B is like more preferable, right? The B getting B.
B sometimes it depends on these values of internet connection fees.
Even
Yep.
if there is one monopoly, one
Yes.
non-neutral,
Yes.
then it will be preferable.
But if we want to consider diversity in ISPs, then it's not obvious from this kind of model.
So, what's your recommendation?
That's hard because
I mean, you have analyzed it now from different angles, but like
So-
if you have to now come up with something like a decision, what would you say?
okay, that's a tough question actually. That's a good question. So again, it depends. So we don't know exactly how the quantitative data of competition right now in US is, right? So we don't know how to model these TN and TNON based on real data. We don't know the fraction of users that don't have any choices for any other ISPs for instead of Comcast. But if we assume that Comcast has some kind of monopoly over the market, then it should be some incentives by the government for small ISPs, but with the condition that they stay neutral. So I provide some tax deductibles for the neutral ISP, for some ISPs, if they stay neutral and do not implement this non-neutrality on the internet. Then probably everyone has the option to choose their internet, either they go with neutral and non-neutral. We probably have some competition. Because of the competition, the internet connection fees go down, and content providers which are using this infrastructure for free had to pay something, which somehow compensate what I pay as an end user. Thanks. Any other question?
So I just comment, like, if you have, like, if you make the bargaining power of the content provider and ISP like reverse order, right? If you make, like, if you also have some bargaining power on the content provider regarding the price chosen to the content provider in non-neutral setting, have you considered that?
No, but this quality that they set somehow translate into a bargaining power, not implicitly, not explicitly, just implicitly.
Okay. So let's thank the speaker again.
Thanks.